Welcome back to Blurred Lens Pictures. And, well, if you'd been following along recently, by the way, I'm Brent Noury, and I'm your host today for the full reading of The Flower Maker, which is the novel that I've just written over the last month, basically. And if you've been following along in our live sessions here, I've been doing a series on it where I've been reading it piece by piece. And ideally, what we're going to try and do here is read as much of it starting from the beginning through. We got this whole part done. It's part one of The Flower Maker. And if you've been following along, you've already heard all of this, but we're going to start from the beginning and try and give it a full reading. I've had, hopefully I can read it. Hopefully I can read it well. This is going to be a long video, so hopefully we get a lot of viewers and likes and people in the chat. If it's long enough, of course, you can go back to the beginning and start from the beginning. Been celebrating because I finished part one, which is pretty long. This is 100 deep, like seriously dense pages of writing. And it has the unnatural essay, it has Can It Be Fair, it has the opening preface, and all of these things are going to be in the index. So the actual preface to this novel, I put it in the description, and I'll probably post some other stuff maybe in the description of this one. Oh, let me open this here. We're in the park reading The Flower Maker, and a beautiful fall day that's very windy, and the leaves are, well, currently not blowing across the field. But welcome all to Blurred Lens Pictures. Again, I'm Brent Noury. We're going to do a full reading of The Flower Maker today. Hopefully it's 100 pages, so it's going to be a long reading. So feel free to take a break, come back to this. It'll be posted tomorrow or however long it takes to upload something that might be 2 hours. Oh, we already got somebody here. Mr. Silence? Mrs. Islands. Welcome to the channel, Mrs. Islands. How's your day going? I'm doing pretty good, man. I just had a couple of little shots of whiskey, celebrating the finishing of the novel, and we're going to try and read the whole thing. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. If you can like and subscribe, obviously that's awesome. But we're gonna try and attempt to read part one of the novel. And if you want to, again, like I said, this will be up in the next couple of days, posted as a live thing on my channel, and also you can find it in my playlist. I have the whole journal of me writing this thing from the beginning inception, when I didn't really know what it was going to be, up until where we are now, where I'm reading the whole thing from the beginning. Like I said, though, there's a tricky little thing with this novel where I put the preface, which is this neighbor next door who's screaming like prophecy and stuff. He's had like some heartache and stuff like this in this long, kind of maybe 5-page poem. It's going to be in the index. Oh, hang on one second. Look out the beautiful park. It's going to be in the index as like index part one. And there's also an article that he's writing called Can It Be Fair? We're going to skip reading that because that's going to also be in the index as index 2. And so the reader can kind of get interactive with it. Now, this isn't a long novel. So ideally, this would be like a pocket novel that anybody that's an artist out there, happy Halloween to everyone out there. Jose. It'd be like a pocket novel that any like person could kind of carry around in their satchel, so to speak. So again, it's called The Flower Maker. Let's start letting your imagination start rolling with what that could mean and what that's about. Hopefully the narrative is clear enough. And that's in a sense why we're putting the preface. The preface is kind of a bit of a jumbled poem. But that's in the index, is index part 1, and when the book gets released, it'll be in the back of the book, along with the scientist's essay on the unnatural. That'll be in the back, along with Canopy Fair, which is the writer's article that he tried to write. All right, we're going to start with the beginning. Now that people are showing up. Again, everybody, happy Halloween. There is a bit of a, I'll tell you, this is a monster story. The more this came along, this is kind of like a scary, haunted mansion story with a mad scientist and a beekeeper who is trying to figure out why the bees are dying. And there's a damsel, but she's like a ghost that wanders around and kind of shows up through the windows. And that's all in this kind of like, well, you'll find out. You'll find out how that story gets entered into. So thank you everyone for showing up. This is Blurred Lens Pictures. We're starting from the beginning of The Flower Maker. We're in the park where the artist finds himself at times throughout this. It's a long way to go. Let me find page 1, because page 1 isn't actually on page 1 because of the preface and everything. Welcome everyone. Again, who do we got here? Yep, Haunted Doo-Doo Box. The Possessed Toilet. Yeah, man. Those are dangerous. Y'all feel free to get into whatever. Get yourself a little elixir going or whatever you'd like. Might be tea, might be whatever you got. I got a little thing here. I'm not advertising anything, but cheers to anyone who's watching. And we got other smoke substances going and stuff too. All right, we're gonna get right into it. It's gonna, like I said, it's gonna be a long reading, so we'll have some fun with it. How y'all doing? Hey, Colt Chem, thanks for showing up. Hope y'all like and subscribe. Of course, this is Blurred Lens Pictures. There's a lot of different stuff on this channel, but this is The Flower Maker. Whoa, I don't want to burn it. It's going to be a fun little novel for artists out there. Anyone that's into art, which you obviously are if you're on YouTube and you have your own channel, you're totally into independent sort of like creators and creating your own thing and getting out there. And this is a little bit of like, not to get right into about what Plato's about, but birthing ideas out of your imagination. So anyways, I'm Brent Noury, and welcome to Blurred Lens Pictures, and we're doing a full reading of The Flower Maker by Brent Noury, a new novel. And this is chapter 1, In the Apartment. Brack! It started with a crack, and then, like a tsunami, unstoppable. Who was anyone to hold back nature? Next was the roaring waves. There'd be no triumphant horns this evening, not for him, the man next door. He'd been a bellowing fool, but now the soreness to his cries weakened even evil hearts. This was just the beginning to a new-found sadness, losing a perfect treasure to the abyss. The lights go out for good sometimes. There's no filing this away. No way to put it into context. Where would a piece like this belong? And with a pain such as this man's, he'll die before he contemplates the truth of that. Ah, yes, the truth in death. Is there any other so certain? Are there boundaries to death and thereafter? I guess ideas such as those only have answers in the in-between, where things suddenly appear and are gone, with the hints of a ghost-like trail. Prophecy. What of it? More tyranny for the internal ledger? More of the same unfulfilled external pleasures? Fighting against time's eternal leisure. Soft were the landings when young for some, a lifetime spent narrating one's own soul, Bitter and cold becomes the winters of age. The heart only lies at the end. Epics are every day, and in the between of what seems there, all minds are lost. Where each thought began, no one can truly know, but set a course and cognate into artistic rhythm, and set sail on your own drawn maps of desired destiny. The dying gods and heroes have left room for more mortal demise, without such pomp as a well told tale, a well tattered tale which hangs without pride. The cave is dark, with barely a light shadow on the wall. Figures blend into oblivion, the unforeseen. But what I have seen in upper lands is nouveau nor, new light. I build a ladder with my bare hands to send it down into time's sand. And why was I so jealous of Romeo? It seems so silly now with some age. But years ago, I would have killed and died for love. I didn't even know what it means. Maybe I know less now. Maybe love is hard to find. Maybe it's everywhere. Maybe it's not real, but how could that be the case or so? I've seen it. It's tough to know too much of a thing without even knowing it at all. Well, for instance, philosophy of life, I guess. It's a slow flood. Eventually, your ideal civilization will drown in it. The rushing waves, which were distant and easy on the eyes, become the steady torrent. Oh, thank you, horizons, for you give warning and set the gaze. We're traveling with clouds I view on all things, but with a hawk's eye, nay, an eagle. Wings are but my soon loon evolution when angels call. Does death hath wings, or are they filled with lead? His dread is that of weight, and so are the dead. I've heard of something that can defeat said foe, but few can pen such a deed, and still a strange new mother awaits her seed. He'd heard the sounds coming from next door before, rants and raving of all sorts. But this time today, there was a frightening wailing to their angst. In the deciphering of it all, the message became clear. The beautiful daughter of the stranger in the next apartment up the hall had perished. He had seen her a few times over the last few years, coming and going to visit his neighbor. Over the time, it had appeared she had perhaps developed some bad health, or, most obviously, developed a drug habit. His screams of anguish were of her demise. The sound became clear. This was a sickness, he thought, built in humanity and beings that can feel and think. How sick, how perverse. To make man suffer so. It reminded him of the woman across the parking lot, directly outside the south-facing window of his studio apartment. He had two big windows in that corner, one facing south and one east towards the simple but beautiful stone chapel next door. The woman had found her son dead, the same poison. She had screamed throughout the night, only two discernible phrases of four total words. My son, and my son is gone. This sound still echoed in his ears somewhere, maybe in the back of his mind, like the band that had been playing in the park next to the chapel the night he officially moved in. It was a school band practicing a jazz-inspired number, and he had taken the moment to breathe it all in. A sense of freedom, accomplishment, and beauty ringing through the streets. Since then, things had only gotten darker, and his work had gotten stranger. He must, he would tell himself, and those few close friends he felt could accept him, he must be original or different. In being opposite, he can re-describe the thing. The thing. It was the thing that he would focus on, what it is and what meaning there would be. What he found was only an ever-perplexing maze with each step. The thing was elusive and organic. He began to believe he was the thing, and so was everyone else. The pen becomes a magnet to the hand to page. The page tells the tale. It holds the history. Oh, but the mind that hand is connected to, and all its tiny thoughts, gathered and collected, shining all the good ones. Here's an idea he thought once, more golden and sweet than honey. The flower maker and the beekeeper, two people he had imagined from incidental occurrence. He had watched the flower delivery man who brings the fresh flowers to the shop on the corner, just in view, out the south window, next to the parking lot to the right. And at the same time, he had watched a resident of the building he lived in park his company van next to the chapel out the east window. The company was a pest removal service that he worked for. But the artist imagined a world where he was a beekeeper, and the man delivering flowers was some kind of genius scientist, genetically enhancing his strains of exotic specimen flora. By now, the picture had started to become clearer. He wouldn't be a man in the clouds looking down 200 years from now at people admiring his work for its use of light and shade, the particular colors chosen to re-represent life. It didn't work like that. But still, he thought, what would I know? Meaning had become the nectar he was searching for in art, how to extract it and distill it, then put it under a microscope of the mind's eye where the meaning can expand and seem limitless, universal. The beginning part of his adult life, he'd had an obsession with falling in love, and he'd worked many odd jobs to support the habit. And at these jobs, he'd spend the time daydreaming about little inventions, simple as a paperclip. Where did they come from? And could he think of such an idea? Countless hours imagining the tiniest useful creation. He started to have multiple ideas a day, but soon found most of them already available for same-day shipping on Amazon. Then, after a time of years in his search, ideas began to appear involuntarily. Like a bite from Grandma's tea-soaked cookie, an image in nature would appear before him, and a flood of thoughts would rush the gates. And it may take him hours of sitting or wandering to unwind the knot and pick the lock, a puzzle inside the soul. It was somewhere in that abstract place between worlds. If you could only recognize it, you could draw meaning. And then that meaning would infest the work with livestock and fertilize the grass to grow. And eventually the whole image could be made of meaning. A wonderful ecosystem feeding on itself and thriving. But then it will meet its end, as all things brought to life will surely do, overused or spread thin and commercialized. And then again would be the dreadful sick heavy thought, the weight that hangs in invisible shadows. What's the use? And so would begin the process again of belief. Where can it be found, when sometimes it seems so easy to find water in the flood? Now, it's quite disassociate of me not to explain my part, or shall we say, our part in the whole mix of this story. But if we could get this creature of flesh to get the gears in order, to propel himself towards heroic acts, then perhaps some of our secrets could leak out into the known. For instance, recently I've noticed him pulling away from the painter's life and delving further into writing. This transition from painter and poet to musician and filmmaker has guided him perfectly to the page. And lately, more and more, we've been able to seep through and into the ink. Last year, he wrote a Gothic dystopian play about an emperor who erases history and everyone speaks in backwards talk or confusion. Then wrote a novella about a utopian town somewhere over the hills, about generations and times of struggle and heroes. He was most proud of this work above all his others so far, and had even received acclaim from the few who read it. Neither work had been published, and in fact, getting an article published had been his most recent endeavor. Now we know why we're here, and we can see this angle of the artist. I would say, don't worry too much about me and what we're doing here. That will all reveal itself. Now that you know, we can move on to the more pressing nature of the story, or stories within. It was an apartment of some taste. The views from the windows were splendid, and there was a nice porch to sit on to watch sunsets in the west. The third floor heights gave a better look at the surrounding area, though it was a pain for any other practical apartment use, such as coming and going. But it did well for the artist's space, some solitude. When I said some taste, that is to say, the best spot in the building, and a decent spot in the city, North End zip code. But the building was still filled with cockroaches and bedbugs and folks just on the border of homelessness. For instance, a neighbor up the hall could be found sleeping sometimes in the hall as his girlfriend or wife was pimped out in their apartment. The mentioned endeavor to procure a published article had yielded zero results, other than another small essay he was quite proud of. A trip to the fair had excited that part of himself we spoke of, as a fair can do. With so many individuals to see, and events to ponder, and treats to have, childhood nostalgia is within grasp. His orphan niece had been sick and not wanted to go, and his relationship with his stepfather being that of Germany and England in 1940, it would be just himself and his mother enjoying the annual traditions, without the focus of the ride section of the fair, which, unbeknownst to him, held at that very same time an ex-girlfriend of some importance, now treated mainly as a lifelong sister or friend, who was there with her son, one of the catalyst heroes and main character of his novella. They would not bump into one another, and only finding out the next day of the coincidence. But this respite from the rides for a year gave mother and son a chance to explore other parts of the grounds. Okay, hey folks, now this is the part where, yeah, smoke, yeah, feel free. Wrong, wrong ain't right. That's right, man. Um, this is the part where you would go to Canopy Fair in the index, which is his article that he wrote. You can find that if you're looking for it on my channel. Um, it's called Canopy Fair under Blurred Lens Pictures. And sorry, I had to relight this, and we're going to head on to the next thing. I might actually take our friend here's advice here. I'm going to have a sip, another little sip of my. So we've read a good little chunk there. Appreciate everyone for hanging on. And we're going to continue on with the reading. It's pretty dense stuff, but I don't know. Hopefully people can understand it. Let me know if you can't or whatever. And as people show up, we're at 25 minutes. That's a good amount for that, I guess. I guess this is going to be longer than I thought. All right, I'm going to let you guys look out the park. Maybe. Let's see. While I do this. Hang on a second. Not sure what I'm allowed to show on there. A little reader's help. Anyways, I'm carrying on. All right, I'll give you a little bit of the park behind me, maybe. Yeah, something like that. You have to play the game, or something of it. This is so we're coming out of the. If you've read Canopy Fair in the index, you come back here now. You have to play the game, or something of it. Look at all the people who are successful. See how they're doing it? Buying up ad space and a new modern form of self-involvement or indulgence. I'm speaking out loud again. I shouldn't let these narcissists take up my time. That's their aim. I've got more important things to do today for myself. Finally show some work. I don't even believe in it anymore. Just a phase. Just a different face to play, to see what it brings. I guess they're good enough. I don't know. That's the point, right? Show the piece and see what others think. But who cares what they think? You really only need to be told you're good enough. But that only satisfies you, no one else. Selling bits of yourself for worth in others' eyes. Then she'll say you're good enough. Then you're worthy of another life. One of closure and fulfillment. She's that silhouette or the hope around every corner. She turns your eyes from the sunset. She makes you think that's what God intended. Chapter 1.5. Behind the door. Bzzz. It's R.A., he thought. That's right. She's coming early to pick up some of the better pieces set aside by the door last night. He hit the button to let R.A. up into the building. She's been a big help recently in setting up the art show decor and layout for the works. She'd gotten an art degree, after all, to be an art curator, and was very good with organizing such things as events. He had just started to think on a new idea where words would be from and the would figure what had in the spaces. And he would write a few lines like this for fun, not to spoil the whole project. He'd set this idea aside, maybe to remember later, as now his attention would be all spent on R.A. He met her at the apartment door, pre-opened, as to see her coming up the hallway. R.A. was always dressed well and took good care of herself. She had a strong sense of self-worth, but he also knew her secrets and some of the inner workings. Are you going to get dressed today? I plan to shortly. Uh-huh. And brush your teeth? Maybe shave? You know how you look better clean-shaven. Show your true face. It's 10 years younger. I'm going to bring these. She grabbed a collection of paintings from his hands, down to the space, and set up. We should be all set for tonight. I have to run up to the pitch. We're going to sweep off the courts and do a quick ladies' dubs at noon. Then picking up Gray, and we'll all see you tonight. This meant R.A.'s husband would be coming to the showing. which was fine. After an early altercation in their first meeting, he'd always had a very healthy respect for R.A.'s new man. He was a good father and leader in the community, and he himself had always shown a high measure of respect to Bryce. Shave, okay? I think it's going to be a good event. We'll have snacks and drinks for everyone, music, which I've choreographed. Just don't drink or anything too early. I can see you've already smoked. R.A. finally noticed the cries of the man next door. She looked puzzled, made a hand gesture of goodbye, and walked off not to be bothered. Blondes, he thought. Why had it always been blondes with blue eyes? There had been a production line of them for him throughout his life. Lately it had been the opposite, dark hair, dark eyes, which spellbound him. But it must have been something deep in the recess of his memory which triggered it. Or was it an always has been that way thing, like a young Bill watching the postman always rings twice? Yellow and blue, he thought. Works in a painting. He went back in the apartment and started to do all the things one is supposed to do to get ready for the day. There was a goal to the end of this day. There was an extra level of seeking. Nothing instantly would happen from it other than the affect. Still, plans were set for a good time for all, and hopefully his friends wouldn't believe him to be too crazy. He'd sold a bunch of works privately, but this was a chance to show something, a small glimpse of something, the thing he'd been wrestling with, the so-called human condition. Chapter 2. To the gas station. Brack! The door creaked behind him. His first mission of the day was to get coffee and cigarettes. The former obvious. The latter only occurred to him as he stubbed his last one out on the concrete steps of his grand old apartment building, which once had been a schoolhouse about 150 years prior. The morning bustle was ensuing, people having already headed off to their places of employment. R.A. had a good gig. She rarely had to go into work, and the occasional business trip, keeping track of sales of shipping and whatnot. He, on the other hand, had also worked not to work, at times having jobs which gained some comfortable amount of room for expenditures, but now was determined to work just through ride-sharing and contract deliveries to enjoy as much free time and contemplation as he desired. This, of course, became quite a problem whenever expected or unexpected bills came in. That said, he had as much free time as a rich man, and in fact, more. There was a sense of jealousy or confusion, even maybe despising the fact that Bryce always seems to be able to do whatever he wants. He didn't like to think on that too much, that people might think less of him, having no true accomplishments or career prospects other than those which were now invisible cards of a shattered past home spread in a barren wasteland. Those people saw the wasteland. He saw a beautiful field of never-ending ideas, springing imagination. A lot of his friends had kindly pointed out perhaps there was some form of help in the form of an evaluation and shrinking of the mind he could seek out. Though his closest friends deep down he truly believed they knew his good intentions. He wasn't all mad with his ideas and politics. After all, many Republicans had accidentally accused him of being a libertarian. No, he would say in jest, I believe in a type of honest government. And his Marxist friends would accuse him of being a Trotskyist or even a basic liberal. The vanguard is not for me, but neither is rent-seeking behavior or elite overproduction. Just then, oh little what's-her-name, the middle of the three daughters of the podiatrist divorcee who lived in the old Telge building, an old law office on the other side of the stone chapel just east, came up the street with her newest robotic invention. She was a science fair type kid, destined for MIT or something of the sort. The artist had engaged in quite a discussion a few years back with Dr. Sosa. He had walked by the old Telge building and seen Dr. Sosa sitting on the old stone bench off the side patio within the garden, over the iron fence. The artist had spotted the source of the doctor's mumbling, a crossword puzzle in his hands. Knowing the doctor to be some form of foot doctor from mumblings in the building, he quickly shouted the answer is bipeds. With a grin, he awaited response. No, in fact, it's something of more legs, I'm afraid. Ah, the slayer of the dragon Fafnir, and whose father was Siegfried. Yes, that's what I put, and it's right. But now the rest is ruined. Lauren, that's her name, he thought. Good morning, Lauren. Look out! She exclaimed as she trudged past with the three-wheeled robot, as if on to conquer the planet of humans. He had a sense with her, like a lot of smart children, or people, that they better watch where they're going, or they'll get caught up in their own ideas and inventions. He saw something of that in himself. Though he had never been the smart kid in class, he had been more of the clown or wise-ass. He did look to what the best students were reading about, and he did listen and converse well with what the band members were discussing, and the cute girls were into the jocks, which is where he belonged, he supposed. But it was dull there. Sports were only interesting if he could change the world through them. And by the time smoking weed and cutting class became an everyday option, the prodigy baseball career was over. So young it seemed looking back now. Nothing is over at 19. But that's when art set its sights again on the muse. She'd secretly been coming to him in colors and dreams, and hints of important memories. Now she was there to stay always on the surface and in sight. She was like a light that you can't quite see, pointing in a direction you don't quite know, but have had some interest. She's not quite the Freudian sense of things like ego and whatnot. These things bowed before her in her reign supreme. Another world where maybe even Gabriel was under her command. The realest connection to the monad, the most pure, the most truthful, in the sense of the word. Perhaps God in drag, he thought, when he wants to show off, like, isn't the message getting through? I'm trying to play nice. I like poems too. Ah, yes, he thought, that other place, too complex to define and drives those mad who try to. So carry on with one's day. Observe the Aristotelian things of outside wonder in the physical realm. Don't pay too much attention to what's going on inside my head. It's too early for that. Stick to the regiment plan and get to the corner gas station for a morning joe and cigarettes. Then we can begin the contemplation of the mess around us. He had tried to describe it to R.A. once, the feeling of encountering the muse. But such was folly. She was practical, R.A., pragmatic and sensory. Those deeper searches seemed a bit fluffy, not unlike Socrates in the clouds, though R.A. wouldn't get the reference. R.A. thought seeing films was a waste of time, could be better spent. They weren't that good, after all. But if enough acclaim was levied on a large project in the art world to where any decent, intelligent young woman of some self-discovery and worldliness should show some attention as to stay up to date in the regular fashions, R.A. would be in attendance. R.A. was 9 years older than the artist, and so their friendship had always held some level of experience reflected on the youth. They'd met when he was 24 and ended intimacy in his 30th year. His father had recently perished, and his sister soon to follow a few months later. In his mind, that early life was exactly that. Split, another life. And in his second life, the ideas started to take on a life of their own, and he found joy in noticing himself doing that, noticing his own humanity, his own being, himself wrapped in himself with bigger ideas such as how does this fit in? And if it doesn't, does that mean that it does? If you could see reality, the world would be a swirling madness not fit for human consumption. Then he'd take a deep breath and realize he's back dealing with life as it happens, which might actually be more enjoyable. But now, in this latter period, he held to moments like precious. They were jewels. And the artist liked collecting these gems, not to keep, but to share. But the treasure was invisible. You had to believe in it. It was so hard to get others to believe in the missing treasure. It was everywhere, he would proclaim. It's a ghost. It lives between infinity. It holds infinity. And it is sad because it doesn't know it exists. This type of philosophy started to infect his work, a connection to the divine through truth in art. But that led him to some strange thoughts, such as when was lightning striking, and how much effort to divert to each of the many projects being juggled in the ether of his mind. Like a carousel, they would take their turn, first a vignette, and then, if percolation suited, a piece would be carefully crafted to the menagerie. Quite often, involuntarily, the idea would emerge, and it would fit this puzzle almost in a natural sense. How could it be any other to him? This latest vision, which previously discussed, was forming itself like all the others, only newer. And who knows what that means? Other than it was taking hold and blinding a portion of his inner sight. There was something about the mad scientist developing a flower more beautiful than God's, and the beekeeper who finds the greenhouse and meets the mistress, and a hidden place emerges. He thought about something for a moment, but then it disappeared as he thought about something else. He had a tendency to do that. Forget what had just been, and then remember he was on to something, and maybe sometimes to stitch back. Excuse me. And maybe sometimes he could stitch back what he had thought if he caught a thread. Like, for instance, this idea came rushing back as he saw a fat man climb out of his car and head into the gas station ahead on the corner. It was a fat man, not unlike the comic Hollywood type that would be cast in a main role. A bumbling idiot, mistaken identity of him seemingly being the healthiest and most well-fed of the bunch. The tribe would then be forced to adopt the fat buffoon as chief, and perhaps a whole new religion would ensue for the nation. But then he thought, he's not really funny enough to tell that tale proper. All of his jokes spring from irony and the fallout. He could get sidetracked with these things all day, he thought. Besides, the character didn't even have a name yet, which meant he could be erased. But perhaps again, he thought, this could be a simple storytelling device, some minor idea that doesn't work in the maximalists, to be shrunk to a piece of good footing needed at the right time for an alpine climber. In the 10th anniversary to his annus horribilis, he began his quadrennial, which is to say, he turned 40 over that proverbial hill. Nonsense. Each day runs into another with only light, shade, and color. The constant is aging. The moments have piled up into forgetful land, that place he talked about in his novella, a mountain gaining in heights with every thought. And the place at the top had infinite room, and no one had to be sorry for what they were, because everyone was royalty, and everyone served each other and the land. Writing was like playing God, and the more he looked into it, the history of it, that's exactly what he found. Christ's major mistake, perhaps speaking too much. Plato lived a longer life. Looking up, he realized he had reached the gas station, and his first sight was the usual homeless man nestled in the corner nook in the back part of the store. He was just beginning to stir from a night spent in the mid-autumn air. One of countless others, seemingly everywhere. They didn't seem to be there as much when I was young, he would think. Or was I just getting older? Was there no way to save them? I mean, we don't even try. But a good start would be saving it from happening. Oh, nice. The newspaper. What do they have to say? Have they caught up to 5 months ago news? Are they on the other side yet, depending where the money is headed? The headlines are a troll, and these beasts live in a cave. Hello in there. Shall we shine a light and cable down? But who is the reader anyways? And what say do they have in it all? The writer has barely any control once the thing is written. If he looks too deeply into it, he'll see his own Caliban reflection. It takes great strength to carve the words to last as long as Enheduanna. Her words were of pain, fury, and war and triumph, and gods. Gods from the dark side of the moon. Had that just jumped into his mind now? At the same time he heard it playing as he stepped into the store. I suppose that could have triggered it. Did I hear it walking up before the dull headlines? No, it had happened in order as he thought. He had said the line, and then the song began. That had been happening more and more lately, and he had noticed it happening. He didn't even call it déjà vu anymore. It was that synchronicity of things in the right place. He hadn't believed in it all of his life, but lately he did. To him, they were simply signs. All of these thoughts would come storming in like thunderclouds with bolts from Zeus. And he'd have to try to collect them and categorize them so they wouldn't get lost. And so he could get back to focusing on what he was doing. Another styrofoam cup. How many must that be sitting somewhere just from him? He did the rough math in his head. Something like at least one a day for the last 15 years. Something in the range of close to 6,000 cups, waiting for nail polish remover, which would only destroy the atmosphere. He had a love-hate relationship with plastic, as in, it was very useful, undoubtedly, but perhaps humans were obsessed with it and using it for all the wrong reasons. He had categorized technology and plastic with selling things in the binder, which read dangerously useful on the cover in the file cabinet of his mind. Someone, somewhere, was getting extraordinarily wealthy off filling the ground with toxic forever chemicals. It's pathological, he thought. It's not even a choice, this thinking on meaning thing. It's built into the programming. He might have chosen another way if he could, but there was something lurking in the fascination of the searching for it, being the eyes of God, perhaps. The full extent of its octopus arms, an infinity of arms and arm's length. It was not an excuse, he thought, to proclaim pathology for his obsession with art and history and other people's ideas, which could be woven in his own tapestry. It was a self-described diagnosis, and he wondered how many others were secretly afflicted with it. He had noticed this peculiar thing when he was young, but now, with some age and experience with tackling the Western canon of ideas, a whole entire carpet ride with Scheherazade was taking place on a daily basis. Stories were everywhere, and he could think of a million a day. But the writing of stories was something in itself. The whole entire grandiose delusion would take hold, and he would find himself in a Neverland or an Oz or a Wonderland. But they were his own land, inside his own mind, or so he thought. His own Yaknapatawpha, with a cabin on top of Grady Hill, a vortex of everything finding its place. On his Mayan calendar, and then they would be others, and in their thoughts, if they found what he had written down. And it wouldn't survive the explosion of the sun, and therefore he and the Beatles were something of the same. But for quite some time he had already began to believe that inventions were in fact not real. Ideas came from the constant infinity we are all a part of. Something like what Plato said. They were perfect in an invisible place. And when we created something such as the wheel, it had always been. It was hard for him to believe that if there was life out there in the cosmos, that they didn't have TV screens or cars or machines or books or math or their own stories of wars and love, and an understanding or misunderstanding of order. And if we were to reach them, that they didn't have radio or computers. Or maybe humans were even stranger than he'd thought. Possibilities were endless inside infinity, surrounded by infinity. So set that aside, I guess, he thought. Good, they have cream in the machine today. I'd hate to use milk. He went about performing his coffee ritual, which had to be perfect and in the right procession, or else the day was not started right and could be a sign of things to come. A good amount of cream, followed by hopefully freshly brewed bold, and then the morning count of 1, 2, 3, and just pulling the sugar away at the precise count of 4. Lately the sugar had been clumpy and ruined the design of his whole project. He could tell by the color of the coffee, the tone of the tan brown, how it would taste. If the exact amount of desired cream in any way came out as too light a tan color, once cup filled, the result would be a sugar-flavored water cream with hints of coffee bean. What a wreck of a morning could ensue! Though lately He had developed a horrible habit of having his first drink of the day before he'd even finished his cup of coffee. Now, let's not paint our artist as too much of a neurotic. In fact, on the outside, he appears quite laid back, perhaps overly passive. He had lionized the Fonz and Steve McQueen and James Dean early on, and still felt a man should have some presence of a Darcy or an Atticus or a Clooney, but also somehow, if needed, have the fighter's will to be prepared in violent forms of overly masculine instinctual expression, to be smart enough to diffuse or defend, and again, to be left with the thought, which fights to fight? What things are worthy of a life lost? For violent acts can fragment than any other in the cosmos. They are but the fireworks to any celebration, the mere language of chaos. All stones unturned will never find the keys to these hieroglyphs. The register pops open in exact timing to the beginning of the Pink Floyd's Money, and again, all signs are there as he collects his cigarettes and coffee from the counter. The store is quieter. Besides, the store is quieter besides the music than normal. He overhears the employees discuss the eccentric character Cat was fired yesterday. Cat had been part of his morning ritual for some time now, maybe 2 years. A daily bit of comic relief would ensue. Cat and her friend, the other employee of Comic Relief, Alexis was her name. He was proud of himself for remembering her name this time, as names to remember were such a difficult thing for him. R.A. had taught him a trick for remembering names. When playing doubles with a new team, she would be sure to recite their names back to them in meeting, and therefore trying to dig some groove into memory's record. And he had enacted the technique to little success, as the randomness of meeting new people was simply a blur, and to extract as much effort into remembering trifle things such as names when he could simply describe them as things or of things or in the place of things, made him a bit sick to his stomach at the very thought of maybe having to remember every character he was to come across in an entire lifetime. No, R.A. would say, just in the hour we're going to be here. The two jesters would commence with their improvisational act performed in the store, using esoteric half-words and cackles to keep up the comic intensity. Both wild in their own way, and many years apart, but somehow sisters. A whole mess of laughter would be the morning trip inside the store for coffee. But now that would be no more. Cat had been fired. She had done something wrong as manager for the company, I guess. Even though she had been there 10 years and worked many night shifts and long hours and covered when others were out sick or quit, she had been there. But now she was gone. And so was the morning comic relief. And what would happen to Alexa or Lexus if her mentor was no longer there? She would have to move on, into the place where all in for others, an abyss to them. And characters such as eccentric Cat come along through the mist and exit with the melancholy Jacques. All right, folks. Well, we did an hour. I'm going to call it quits for right now, and I might come back on live in a little bit. I'm looking like it's probably going to take about 3 hours to read this. So, appreciate you all tuning in. That's part one of this little reading. We're going to get the whole thing done and not have too much chatting in between so that we can get it up on the channel. Thank you very much for staying tuned, and we'll have another full hour reading session next. Appreciate y'all. Like and subscribe if you can. Thank you.